It began with the flicker of a live notification. On the morning of March 25th, 2023, dozens of people across Mississippi were scrolling through their feeds when a familiar name popped up on Facebook.
Don't touch me,
Don't
bro.
have nobody over here.
Oh, baby, tell your daughter to keep her hands on me. Tell your daughter to keep her hands on me.
You the one slap me. You the one slap me. Hit me now. Hit me now.
Keep your hands on me.
Cadia is live. For many of her followers, this wasn't unusual. She had streamed before, often when tensions were high, sometimes to share her frustrations in the heat of the moment. But this time, something about her tone, the urgency in her movements made the air feel different. The moment the feed opened, viewers saw the camera jostling as she moved from room to room in her apartment. There were flashes of a lived-in space, children's toys scattered across the floor, a blanket slipping from the back of the couch, laundry in a corner. In the background, Jeremy Brown's voice could be heard, low and deliberate, the tone of someone who had already made up his mind about something. Every so often, another woman's voice, Cadia's mother, cut in from off camera, adding pressure, giving her own sharp commentary. The overlapping voices, the constant movement created an uncomfortable rhythm. People watching might not have known the specifics, but they could feel the tension. Then, without warning, the feed captured a single deafening gunshot. The camera jolted violently, the screen blurred, and in an instant the live ended. Off camera, chaos erupted, screams, hurried footsteps, confusion. The abrupt cutoff left viewers stunned. For some, the initial instinct was disbelief. Surely it wasn't real. Surely it was just noise. Others felt a pit forming in their stomachs, recognizing the sound for what it was. The comment section exploded. What was that? Did she just shoot him? Call the police now. At 7:42 a.m., the Loudoun County Sheriff's Department began receiving calls. Some from people who had been watching the live, others from neighbors who heard the shot echo through the building. Deputies were dispatched immediately to the Greentree Apartments. When they arrived, they stepped into chaos. 4 children, none older than 12, were huddled together, crying and clutching each other. A couple of relatives had already entered and were trying, with little success, to comfort them. The air was heavy with panic. In the living room, Jeremy Brown lay face down in a growing pool of blood. Paramedics assessed him quickly, but the single gunshot wound to his back had struck vital organs. There was no chance of saving him. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Cadia was still there, standing a short distance away. The fire in her voice from earlier was gone. She looked pale, her breathing shallow, her hands unsteady. When questioned, she admitted she had fired the gun during the argument, but her explanation didn't match what the deputies were already piecing together. Jeremy had been unarmed. He had been walking toward the door. The bullet's entry point told its own story. He was shot from behind. Officers secured the apartment, marking and photographing every detail. The 9mm handgun lay on the floor, its slide locked back, a single spent casing nearby. The Facebook Live video, already being shared across social media, was immediately downloaded and preserved. Investigators secured the metadata to confirm the exact timeline. Later, a digital forensics officer explained, "It's rare to have a homicide case where we have the moments before the act captured in real time. It changes the way we approach evidence because we're not guessing about the sequence of events. We can see it unfold." Neighbors were interviewed on the spot. One said they'd heard a lot of yelling for several minutes, 2 women's voices, 1 man's voice, and then sudden silence broken by a gunshot. Another neighbor said they recognized Jeremy's voice, describing it as calm but firm, like he was trying to end the argument. Friends who had been watching the live described it as gut-wrenching and unreal. One recalled, "I honestly thought it was going to end like all the other times. Just words. But when I heard that shot, I froze. I couldn't believe it was real." The investigation quickly began focusing on the dynamics between Jeremy and Cadia. To the people who knew Jeremy, he was a steady presence in a world that could often be chaotic. Born on October 18, 1994 in Mississippi, he grew up as the second of 4 siblings. His family didn't have much money, but they were bound by a shared work ethic and loyalty. His mother worked long hours at multiple jobs to keep the household running. His father was a hands-on dad who never hesitated to help a neighbor in need, whether that meant fixing a car or lending tools. Jeremy got that from his dad, his older cousin said. If you called him, no matter what time, he'd be there to help. Teachers remembered him as respectful, attentive, and dependable. He was never the loudest student, but he didn't need to be, an old high school coach recalled. If I needed something done, I'd ask Jeremy because I knew it would be handled right. By his teens, Jeremy had earned a quiet reputation for being the one people could rely on. He volunteered at community food drives, mowed lawns for elderly residents, and stayed out of trouble. His younger siblings saw him as both a brother and a protector. After graduating high school, Jeremy went straight into the workforce. He began as a delivery driver before moving into construction. The hours were long, but he rarely complained. He was working for everyone he loved, said a former co-worker. Every check he brought home was for his family, his kids, his mom. It was during this time that Jeremy met Cadia through mutual friends. She was lively, outspoken, and quick to speak her mind. They were opposites. He was measured, she was fiery, but the attraction was undeniable. He told me once, "She makes life exciting," a close friend remembered. He liked that she wasn't afraid to say what she thought. Their relationship moved fast. Within a year, they were living together. Jeremy provided for her without hesitation, often going out of his way to make sure she had what she needed. He called her his queen, another friend recalled. He was proud of that. But even early on, there were signs of strain. Friends noticed that arguments could escalate quickly. Cadia sometimes took their disagreements public, posting vague but sharp messages on social media. Jeremy, in contrast, preferred to resolve things quietly. He hated drama, his sister said. If things got tense, he'd just walk away for a while. The birth of their first child deepened Jeremy's sense of responsibility. Over the years, they had 4 children together. Jeremy balanced demanding work hours with being present at home, helping with homework, cooking, playing games. His social media showed the highlight reel: birthdays, park outings, family gatherings, but those close to the couple knew that behind the smiles, tension was building. By early 2023, the relationship was visibly fraying. Friends said accusations of infidelity had become common, though no concrete proof was ever found. Cadia often posted about betrayal and distrust. Jeremy, meanwhile, appeared increasingly tired. He didn't want to give up on the family, his cousin explained, but you could tell the arguments were taking a toll. In the days before March 25th, the strain was obvious. Cadia's posts grew more pointed. Jeremy spent more time with extended family. A neighbor recalled seeing him outside late at night, pacing while on the phone. He looked like he was trying to figure something out, the neighbor said, not angry, just weighed down. The events of the morning remain partially unclear. Some say the fight started over time spent with the children. Others believe it was fueled by ongoing accusations of cheating. What's certain is that with her mother present, Cadia began streaming live. The video showed her following Jeremy through the apartment as he moved deliberately, collecting his belongings. Her voice was sharp, her mother's occasionally joining in. The atmosphere was tense, the kind of tension that feels like it can't be pulled back. Then, the shot that ended it all. The autopsy confirmed Jeremy had been shot in the back from close range. There were no defensive wounds. The physical evidence, paired with the Facebook Live, painted a picture prosecutors would later call clear and undeniable. This wasn't self-defense, the district attorney told reporters. This was an intentional act carried out in front of children and broadcast to an audience. Digital forensics experts authenticated the video for court, matching the timeline with 911 calls and other data. Detectives gathered additional evidence, phone records, past social media posts, and prior police call logs. While there was no documented history of physical violence between them, the digital footprint showed a relationship marked by public disputes and private tension. On the evening of March 25th, after hours of questioning, 28-year-old Cadia Brown was formally charged with first-degree murder. As news of the charge spread, the community reacted with shock. "I never thought it would go this far," one neighbor admitted. They argued, sure, but I didn't think it would end like this. The stage was now set for a case that would hinge on one critical piece of evidence, a Facebook Live video that had captured the final minutes of Jeremy Brown's life. The charges against 28-year-old Cadia Brown sent shockwaves through Loudoun County, Mississippi, and beyond. For those who had seen the Facebook live stream, the arrest confirmed what they already suspected. For others, it was the first time they were hearing that a domestic dispute had played out in real time before ending in a fatal gunshot. The official statement from the district attorney's office called it a senseless act and emphasized that the evidence, particularly the live stream video, left little doubt about what had occurred. In the days following her arrest, the Green Tree Apartments became a gathering place for people wanting to pay respects to Jeremy Brown. Small memorials appeared outside the building, flowers, candles, handwritten notes that read, "You'll be missed," and "Gone too soon." Friends and neighbors spoke to reporters, many still in disbelief. One man who had known Jeremy since childhood said, "He was the type to help you move, help you fix your car, whatever you needed. He didn't deserve to go out like that." While the community mourned, investigators continued to build their case. The Facebook Live video had already been preserved and authenticated, but detectives dug deeper. They retrieved cell phone records from both Jeremy and Cadia, combing through text messages and call logs from the weeks leading up to the shooting. They subpoenaed social media records to gather posts, comments, and private messages that might reveal the state of the relationship. They also interviewed family members and friends, not only to establish a timeline, but to give context for the jury later on. One neighbor told detectives she often heard the couple arguing, sometimes loudly enough for voices to carry into the hallway. It wasn't every day, she said, but when they did, it was intense. Investigators also sought the input of digital forensic specialists who could explain how the metadata from the video matched the physical evidence collected at the scene. A lead investigator later recalled, "We had alignment between the timeline of the live stream, the witness calls to 911, and the position of evidence in the apartment. From a case-building perspective, that's as strong as it gets." As pretrial hearings began, the case drew widespread media attention. The unusual element of having a homicide's immediate lead-up captured live was a point of fascination and horror. Legal analysts noted that while video evidence is not new in criminal cases, having the moments before a killing streamed by one of the participants and watched by an audience was extremely rare. Jury selection was a careful process. Both the prosecution and defense wanted jurors who could look at the video objectively, despite its emotional weight. Potential jurors were asked whether they had seen the footage and, if so, whether they believed they could still evaluate the evidence fairly. "It's hard," one defense attorney admitted, "because once you've seen something like that, it's burned into your mind." The prosecution opened by laying out a straightforward theory. Cadia, in a heated argument, armed herself with a loaded handgun and shot Jeremy in the back as he tried to leave. They emphasized that the act had been intentional, pointing to her decision to go live on Facebook during the altercation as evidence that she was aware of her actions and wanted an audience. The defense countered with a different narrative. They argued that Cadia had acted impulsively, overwhelmed by emotions and the presence of her mother in the apartment. They suggested she did not intend to kill Jeremy, framing the shooting as a split-second decision in a volatile moment. When the Facebook Live video was played in court, the atmosphere shifted. Even without the exact words being repeated here, the jurors could see the tension in the movements, hear the tone of voices, and witness the fatal conclusion. Several jurors glanced away at the moment of the gunshot, while others kept their eyes fixed on the screen. A legal expert observing the trial later said, "There's something undeniably powerful about real-time evidence. It strips away layers of interpretation and forces you to confront the raw sequence of events." Witness testimony filled in the blanks the video couldn't show. Jeremy's sister spoke tearfully about his dedication to his children and his role as a provider. "He worked himself to the bone," she said, "and no matter how tired he was, he made time for his kids." A longtime friend recalled a conversation just a week before the shooting in which Jeremy hinted at leaving the relationship for his own peace of mind. He told me he didn't want his kids growing up thinking yelling was normal, the friend testified. Investigators testified about the forensic evidence, the bullet's trajectory confirming it entered from behind, the absence of defensive wounds, and the lack of any evidence that Jeremy posed an immediate threat. The prosecution's case was methodical and unyielding, weaving the physical evidence with the digital record to create a cohesive narrative. The defense brought in a psychologist to speak about human behavior during moments of intense emotional stress. The expert explained how heightened emotions, combined with the pressure of an audience, whether in person or online, can cloud judgment and lead to impulsive actions. But under cross-examination, the psychologist admitted that such factors do not erase intent. They only provide context. As the trial progressed, it became clear to observers that the defense was fighting an uphill battle. The Facebook Live had given jurors a window into the minutes before the shooting, and the forensic evidence aligned seamlessly with what they saw. With public interest high, the courtroom was often filled to capacity. Reporters occupied the back rows, taking notes and quietly typing updates. The tension was palpable on the day both sides delivered their closing arguments. The prosecution urged the jury to focus on the evidence and the choices Cadia made, arming herself, aiming the gun, pulling the trigger. The defense appealed for understanding, arguing that while her actions were wrong, they were not premeditated in the way first-degree murder requires. In the end, the decision never went to the jury. Facing overwhelming evidence and the possibility of a life sentence if convicted at trial, Cadia agreed to a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, a charge that still carried a severe penalty. The plea removed the uncertainty of a trial verdict but sealed her fate. On sentencing day, the courtroom was silent as the judge read the decision. 40 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 25. Cadia stood motionless, her hands clasped in front of her. Jeremy's family sat together, some holding hands, others quietly crying. "It's not enough to bring him back," his mother said afterward, "but it's something. At least we know she's being held accountable." In the months following the sentencing, Jeremy's family focused on honoring his memory. They organized a community event in his name, raising funds for local youth programs. Friends shared stories about his generosity and reliability, painting a picture of a man who was always there for others. One neighbor summed it up: "He was the kind of person you could count on." And now that he's gone, there's a gap in the neighborhood you can feel every day. Domestic violence advocates use the case as a talking point for the dangers of publicizing private conflicts in the heat of the moment. One advocate explained, "When you introduce an audience into a volatile situation, whether it's a room full of people or hundreds watching on social media, it can escalate things quickly. People feel pressure, they feel cornered, and sometimes they act out in ways they can't take back." Legal experts also reflected on the significance of the Facebook Live as evidence. "It's both a gift and a tragedy," one prosecutor said. "A gift because it gave us a clear picture of what happened, and a tragedy because we watched a man's last moments unfold when it didn't have to be that way." The children, now living with relatives, were kept out of the public eye. Family members spoke only generally about them, focusing instead on the importance of providing stability and shielding them from the case's media attention. As time passed, the video continued to circulate online, a grim reminder of that morning. For some, it served as a cautionary tale. For others, it was something they wished they could unsee. What remained certain was that a life had been cut short, and the consequences of that day would ripple outward for decades. This story is more than just the account of a crime. It's a reminder of how quickly things can spiral, of the irreversible weight of a single decision made in anger, and of the lives changed forever when violence enters the home. What do you think about this case? Could it have been prevented? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more real stories that go beyond the headlines, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support helps us share stories that matter. Stories that remind us how fragile life can be and how important it is to pause before crossing a line you can't uncross.